Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the November 9th reconvened meeting of the Joint Review Board. This meeting is being recorded, so for the benefit of those who may be interested in seeing it in a recorded basis, I'd urge our JRB members to take a look at that microphone in front of you, and if that little green light is on, that means we're all good to go. That being said, I'd like to ask our staff liaison to the Joint Review Board, Jason Michnick, to call the roll, please.
DeKalb Township, Ms. Johnson.
Present.
DeKalb Park District, Ms. Collins.
Here.
School District 428, Ms. Carpenter.
Here.
City of DeKalb, Mayor Smith.
Here.
Kishwaukee College, Mr. Nicholas.
Here.
DeKalb County, and it's Mr. Steffen as a proxy for Mr. Hanson.
Here.
And then public member, Mr. Hayes.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We've all been provided approval of the minutes from our September 7 meeting. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at that. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes as presented.
So move.
A second.
It's been moved by Mr. Nicholas, seconded by Mrs. Carpenter. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. At this point, prior to any discussion that we may have regarding our meeting today, I'd like to invite any members of the public to make any comments. Do we have any public members? I know, Glenn, you do. If you just simply go to the podium, identify yourself, and try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
That's easy, thank you. Good morning, everyone. The weather's beautiful outside, by the way. I'm glad we all could gather in such a harmonious event. Glenn Goring is my name. I'm a real estate owner in downtown DeKalb for over 40 years. For the last several months, I've been following closely this chain of events for this TIF program and how the money is allocated. I've done a lot of research this week, and not to the extent that you guys probably have done, but I do feel that my comments are relative. I've talked to many people, and what I've realized is clearly there's been some questionable allocation of some of these funds over the past 20 years, and all of a sudden it's resurfaced now in 2018, which will have a very, very drastic impact on the momentum of this TIF program. I said this in several other meetings. I didn't like to use the word blithe, but when I look at our downtown in relationship to our neighbors' downtowns, it is imperative moving forward that we work together and support redevelopment of downtown, because it's desperate need of some assistance and repair. I personally feel this TIF money will benefit all, short-term and long-term, because it'll certainly generate more income to the various taxing bodies for the whole community. With that being said, if we don't march forward quickly, a lot of the momentum that the city and you all have been working on will be delayed, and in many cases maybe even stifled out. And that greatly concerns me, especially since downtown DeKalb has prospered so well in the past. I personally would like to see it prosper going forward, and it needs a whole lot of people's support and help. With that being said, stay warm, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the Joint Review Board today? If not, we'll move forward to our next item on the agenda, and that is discussion and deliberation, continued from September 7th. If you recall, for the benefit of those watching or listening to this meeting, if you recall, this meeting actually is a reconvening of a meeting that had been suspended on the 7th of September at the recommendation of Jamie Craven, the superintendent for DeKalb Community School District 428, allowing the various taxing districts to work in good faith to review the previous allocation of past TIF funds and develop a set of criteria going forward. I know there has been a working group working, as Glenn suggests, very, very hard over the last couple of months. And believe me, I appreciate all of the work that not only members of that working group had, I also appreciate the input of the attorney for the school district, Gino Galuzzo, and the attorney for Dean Frieders, who were sort of front and forward, if you will, in many of the discussions. So, having said that, I'd open it to any further discussion or deliberation, and at the conclusion of that, I would ask for an approval. Perhaps I should do that first. If I could have a motion to approve the recommendation on the Central Business District Redevelopment Project Area and Plan, and then if I get a second, then we will continue discussion. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Johnson and seconded by Mr. Hayes that we approve the recommendation of the Central Business District Redevelopment Project Area and Plan. With that, I would open the floor to any discussion. Mr. Nicholas.
Just as a matter of information for members present here and for the audience, the Kishwaukee College Board will be taking up the proposed IGA that we have been discussing here for some time, or at least the need for an understanding on a variety of issues that have been raised at the early August JRB meeting, and I'm accordingly only in a position to abstain today from a vote until the board has taken action.
Okay. Any other discussion?
The school district is very similar to Kishwaukee College. Our board did review the intergovernmental agreement at its last board meeting and plans to take action at their November 20th meeting, so we would need to abstain as well until our board does take action on the agreement.
Any further discussion?
And DeKalb County as well will be acting on this November 21st, so we will be abstaining as well.
Any other discussion? As a point of order, I'm going to address our staff liaison, Jason Michnick. It appears at least we have 3 abstentions if we were to take this vote now. And again, this is an advisory vote going forward to the city council. And as is the case with the school district and the county and Kishwaukee College, we too, as a council, have 5 ordinance approvals on Tuesday night at our city council meeting, if in fact we get a positive recommendation from the Joint Review Board today. But Jason, can you make any further comments at this time?
Yes, on Tuesday we will be bringing forward the 5 ordinances that would result in amending the boundaries for the 2 existing TIF districts to remove the parcels that are proposed to be introduced into TIF 3, as well as introducing the 3 ordinances that would result in the creation of TIF 3. We are only going to be asking for first reading, so it will be to receive and file. This would then be brought back at the second meeting in November for final approval, giving all of the various taxing districts boards time to discuss this and vote on the IGA that we have been distributed and gotten comments back. I thank everybody for that. We'll also be introducing the IGA and the budget amendment that goes along with that for the surplus distribution at Tuesday's meeting. Again, just first reading, and then returning that back to council at the second meeting in November.
Is city council consideration on Tuesday night dependent on a favorable recommendation today from the JRB?
If I can jump in on that one, Mayor.
Yes.
I think there are as with many things, there's a legal component and a practical component. From a legal perspective, as was discussed at some of the prior JRB meetings, once 30 days passed from the initial JRB meeting without a recommendation having been reached by the JRB, from a technical perspective, under the TIF Act, that constitutes a positive recommendation. From a practical perspective, though, the impact of this joint review board and of the discussions that have occurred among the different taxing districts, the practical and political impact of that has been far greater than the technical legal impact of the JRB. It would be our recommendation to record the vote of the JRB on the question of TIF 3 as that vote comes down. So if there are abstentions, record them in the minutes as abstentions, and that vote will then accurately reflect the wishes of the JRB members at this particular moment in time. The council action with respect to the initiation of TIF 3 or receiving and filing it is not dependent on the result of that vote today.
Thank you. I guess what I was looking forward coming into this morning is to get some sense of an approval going forward. The abstentions, obviously, while they may not reflect a negative appraisal of where we are at today, we're not going to get the full blessing, if you will, of the JRB. But your explanation, Dean and Jason, is very, very helpful. So with that, and with the clarification for to the chair from the chair's question, are there any other comments or points of discussion today?
Well, if I may.
Yes.
I think if you'd been following the proceedings of the JRB from the beginning, knowing that there were some issues that we were trying to work out, and then to come today and not hear a little bit of what we've discussed, I think it would be confusing. So for the purposes of showing our work, I think I'll maybe provide a little bit of some of the discussion, and I'm sure my colleagues will jump in where necessary. So
Please
there
do. Thank you.
a couple of the issues that have been in discussion that span between the IGAs that were mentioned that deal with the surplus distributions from TIF 1 and 2. But then separate from that is the creation of TIF 3. So I suppose most relevant to the discussion today would be the discussions around the creation of TIF 3, and a lot of the discussions centered on increasing sort of accountability and oversight of expenditures, and what, if any, role the JRB could and would play in that accountability. So I think for people who have concerns about past expenditures or past dealings, I think the city's been pretty forthright in saying that, yes, there is room for improvement in that area, and has been nothing but agreeable to the suggestions that the JRB has made. We have, we're going to be implementing additional meetings and oversight. The operations of the TIF will remain, of course, under the purview of the city in terms of projects and things. But I think the JRB unanimously has stepped up to say that we all require a bigger role at that table to make sure that expenditures are appropriate and that they are what has been reported. So that's something that I think I have heard from several constituents that they want to see greater oversight. So that is a heavy point of discussion that has been met. I think that's a pretty good overview of the TIF 3 related discussions. I'm sure, does anybody else want, yeah.
May I?
Mr. Nicholas, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Very good summary, I think, of a lot of conversation. And maybe just, it should be added for the benefit of the people in the audience today who weren't participating in the working group. There was, at the last gathering in September, which is some 6-8 weeks ago now, the consensus was that a working group to deal on technical issues, many of which you touched on, Jennifer, And also how the reps to the representative taxing bodies could collaboratively work together going forward, and what kind of procedural changes need to be done. So for all that was sort of assigned to a group of people, some of whom are sitting here, some are not, because we needed some technical help on financials and other things. So we, just to mention a couple things that weren't noted, we're looking more specifically at quarterly meetings going forward. That means quarterly financials distributed 2 weeks ahead of time, so that we don't just have a meeting and we're buried with a sea of data that we can't make sense of in time to give a thoughtful vote. Another detail relating to TIF 3, there has been, as everyone in the audience knows, a surplus distribution arrangement with TIF 1 and 2, and TIF 3, if it comes into being, would, after the first 4 years, a surplus agreement would come into effect, which would be a 30% distribution of the surplus, and then after the 8th year, if I'm correct, the 50% distribution that we know now from TIF 1. So those are just a couple of the details that we talked about, and we spent a lot of time on the numbers and then on the governance side.
Thank you. Any other comments? Believe me, Bill, I appreciate your comments, and Jenny, yours. And to your point, this city has heard the message loud and clear, not only about what it is going forward, but Bill, to your point, if in fact there is a strong feeling that this group, or at least representatives from the taxing bodies that are involved in the TIF, need to meet more frequently, I certainly buy into that as the mayor of the city of DeKalb, and I think frankly that our staff does too. So I appreciate your comments. Any other comments? We have a motion on the floor and a second. What I'd like to do is to ask Jason to make a roll call, and if you would simply do an approve, a not approve, or a yes, a no, or an abstain. Please.
DeKalb Township, Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
DeKalb Park District, Ms. Collins.
Yes.
DeKalb School District, Ms. Carpenter.
Abstain.
City of DeKalb, Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Kishwaukee College, Mr. Nicholas.
Abstain?
DeKalb County, Mr. Steffen.
Abstain.
And Public Member, Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
There's 4 yeses and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. Is there anything else for the good of the cause that we need to discuss today? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Joint Review Board.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Steffen, seconded by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? We are adjourned. Thank you.